Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. Today on the Sweetwater Minute, I am joined by Nick Bocott from Marshall. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate
My pleasure.
it. Actually, I think you are the first repeat offender we've had on the Sweetwater Minute, because this is your second time visiting us here.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, welcome back.
Well,
Very
thanks.
cool. So you're here with Marshall.
Correct.
50th anniversary this year.
Yeah, I don't look that old, but yeah.
Anniversary of Marshall, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 2012 marks the big 50, the golden anniversary of Marshall. 50 years of loud, we're calling it.
Right.
And rightfully so, that's what we do.
Right, and Jim Marshall actually started the company. He's had a drum shop, correct?
Correct.
In England, and started building amps for some of the guitar players that come in.
Yeah, cut a long story longer or shorter. Basically, Jim was a very successful drum teacher, started a drum shop at the request of the drummers who didn't like the way they were being treated in London. His store became so popular with musicians, it became a hangout. There was a cafe right opposite it. So, along with the drummers came the bass players and the guitar players, and basically had the same experience in London as the drummers did. And they said, look, if you sold guitar stuff, we'd rather buy from you than these people who treat us with very little respect. So Jim started doing that. And then by talking to the guys, there were some, pretty big names up and coming, Pete Townsend being one of them, for example, that frequented his shop.
Right.
He realized that they were looking for something that didn't really exist. And the closest thing was actually the Fender Bassman, which was very expensive, very hard to come by, but didn't quite have what they were looking for. So Jim recruited two guys, his repairman, Ken Brown, who was there anyway, and a young chap called Dudley Craven. And Jim's mission was very simply to build what he dubbed the first rock and roll amp.
Mm-hmm.
So in the back of this store, they started building this amp based on the sound Jim had got in his head from talking to these guys. And the first 5 were rejected. Number 6, reportedly played by Pete Townsend at the time, was the one where everyone went, that's it, that's the Marshall sound. So based on that single amp, it was put in the front window of the store with no expectations. They sold 26 the first week.
Wow.
And so Legend was born. And Jim actually sold the first one, but got it back. Nearly threw it out on numerous occasions, but now it resides in the Marshall Museum at the factory in Bletchley.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. That's awesome that he has the original one.
Yeah, the number 1 still exists.
Right. So even when he was just starting out, he really had the sound of rock in his mind. That was really what he was going for, was the rock guitar kind of a sound.
Yeah, just by talking to the guys that came into his store, he got it firmly fixed in his head, and he obviously got something right, because the amp he dubbed as being the sound has gone on to be exactly that.
Right, and 50 years later, still
bless
here,
him.
so obviously
Yeah.
got it right. Yeah. So we're here today with the latest entry in the Marshall family of amplifiers, which was just introduced last week at the NAMM show.
Right.
And there's actually 5 amps in the line, correct? And we've got 3 of them here. Can you tell us what we're looking at?
Sure. Well, just so you know, this won't be our only 50th offering. Our 50th anniversary, we don't know the exact date, but we do know it's September, so we're ramping up to that. So we thought a nice start, especially with people liking low wattage amps right now, all tube amps, or valves as we call them in England. We figured it'd be nice to tip our hat to each decade of Marshall's existence by coming out with a 1-watt head and a 1-watt combo that paid homage to an era in terms of sound and also look and feature set. And obviously, this isn't authentic. So the 60s has the JTM look. The 70s has the JMP or Super Lead Plexi look. The 80s has the JCM 800 Jubilee look. And the 2 we don't have here, the 2 pairs we don't have, these will be released in approximately 10-week intervals, by the way. So they'll go right the way through November anyway.
Okay.
But the 90s will be the DSL with the 1-watt head and combo, and the 2000s are JVM. I mean, obviously they aren't authentic reissues. We already do that.
Right.
A JTM 45 is a lot bigger than this and doesn't have one ECC 82 as its power stage.
Right.
But the reaction at NAMM was phenomenal, and rightfully so in my humble opinion. I'm biased, but they really do sound, they are what they say on the tin, if that makes sense. They look and sound like what they're
Right.
supposed to be. What a concept.
And these are all tube amplifiers. They're handmade
Correct.
in England,
Yeah.
and they're really really designed to capture the tone of that particular era.
Yeah, pay homage in a low wattage package. I mean, they aren't hand wired per se. They do have PCBs, but the amount of hand wiring, if you go to the website, you can see it actually. And you'll be able to see it on the Sweetwater website too. Is there's a lot of hands-on, as with all English-made Marshalls, and yet we just wanted to pay homage to an era and make a user-friendly amp. And the funny thing is about 1 watt, everyone thinks 1 watt is minuscule. A proper 1 watt amp, i.e. a Marshall 1 watt, is actually very loud, to the point that even though it sounds little, it sounds little on paper, it's actually a big sounding amp. So each of them has a switch that will take it down to 0.1 of a watt, making it neighbor-friendly, if you will. So you can actually play at home and not have the neighbors call the cops.
Right.
And if you don't believe me, someone needs to go to a store or go to Sweetwater, buy one of these and play it at 12 o'clock at night and see how long it is before they get a knock on the door with an enraged neighbor or a siren in the back,
Even just with a 1 watt amplifier.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Really, it's. I don't think a lot of guitar players understand that even the difference between a 50 watt amp and a 100 watt amp is not a tremendous amount of volume. It's the amount of headroom.
Yeah.
That you really have there. I mean, it is louder, obviously, but so most amps, when they're idling or when they're playing at normal playing levels, really aren't putting out a ton of watts.
No.
And that extra wattage is more in the headroom. So with a 1 watt amp, you can really push that back end.
Yeah, which is, for any good old tube amp, be it Marshall or some of the other companies that make great amps, invariably, as a good friend of mine once said, the sound of a great tube amp is the sound of power tubes dying.
Right.
You're punishing them brutally.
Right.
And but the resulting tone is something that guitar players aspire to and lust for, that has yet to be digitally modeled. And to be frank with you, I can't see how someone can model something that complex.
Right. Right.
I don't care how clever the iPad is. It's not going to sound like one of these. I'm sorry.
The combo has a 10-inch speaker, is that correct?
Correct, yes, Celestion.
And was that specially designed for the combo, or is that something that you have been using?
We have a very close relationship with Celestion, so they basically supply us with a bunch of 10 inches, and we found 10 inches that work best for the situation in hand. I'm not going to say that they were custom voiced per se, but they were they're speakers that work. And if they didn't work, we would have had something custom voiced, because that's something we do a lot with Celestion.
Right. Right. So really you can go from, if you want a 60s kind of a gain structure and you want that kind of crunchy kind of a sound, the early Clapton kind of a tone, those kind of things, you've got the JTM. And if you want to go more into the 80s, the JCM. So you really have whatever tone you're kind of after as a guitar player, whatever kind of band you're playing with, kind of recordings you make, you can really choose the flavor that you want. Or the cool thing, and certainly what I want, is to have all 5 of them, so you have the whole selection of all the Marshall sounds, right?
That's one of the pleasing things about these, is like this one, to me, leaps out. It's the 80s, which is when I grew up. It doesn't come with a wig or spandex, unfortunately, but having said that, this is so much fun to play. They all are. All 5 are great to play, and they have a different flavor.
Right.
They're kind of like different beers, if you will. A lager doesn't taste the same as an ale, doesn't taste the same as a stout. And as you can see, not only does it look differently, but the feature set is different. The JTM just has 2 controls, tone and loudness. So you definitely don't need a manual for it. It's like a hammer. You know what to do with it. But as they progress through the decades, the feature set becomes more complex. The gain becomes increasingly bigger. Surprise, surprise. They become more aggressive as well. So each one has a unique tonal, I guess, character, if you will, identity.
Sure. They're a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And like you said, the response at NAMM was great. We're just so excited to get these in. They're going to be rolling out over the course of several months.
Yes.
Or through the course of the year, really, to get all 5 models out. Collect them all. They're going to be a lot of fun.
I think it's kind of an addictive thing. You'll stop. I'm just going to get one, but before you know it,
you have to have the whole set.
One's too many. 5's not enough. Actually, 5's perfect. You need all 5. Actually, you need all 10.
There you go. Right. Nick, thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And thanks for coming back for our second visit with the Sweetwater Minute.
Oh, you'll be stuck with me. I'll be back for number 3.
We'll look forward to it.
Cool. Thanks, Mitch.
Check these amps out. They really sound great. They're a lot of fun. They're the perfect volume level for a home studio, for rehearsal, for when you're practicing, whatever you want to do, whatever tonal flavor you want from your Marshall, you can get it out of these amplifiers. Lots and lots of fun. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.